Welcome to the Show Me the Shift podcast with Coach Lenora, certified life coach, HR certified professional, international best-selling author, and creator of the Victorious Movement, a members-only community where she coaches her members from stuck to action and from scarcity to abundance in the areas of mindset, goal setting, and monetization online. The Show Me the Shift podcast was created to encourage people to action in the areas of their career, purpose, and how everyday people can generate an income by being an affiliate of other people's products. Here is our host, Coach Lenora.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's show. How is everybody doing today? I hope everybody is doing well. Today is Wednesday, so that means that our topic today is going to be about coaching from a career perspective. And so what I felt like I would want to talk about today was about interviewing and the do's and don'ts of interviewing when it comes to what you should do, what you shouldn't do, and making sure that people kind of go into interviews with the right tools so that they can be successful. So I'm going to hop right into today's training. This training also is available in my Victorious Movement community as well. And so for anyone who is interested in that, there is a link in my bio, or you could basically go to my profile and go to the website in there, and it has how you can gain access to the Victorious Movement. And so on that note, we'll go ahead and hop into today's training. And again, it's about the do's and don'ts of interviews. And I feel as though some of these things that I'm going to share are going to be things that, logically make sense. Some of them you're going to be like, yeah, no brainer. That's absolutely what we should do during an interview. But there may be some tips or tidbits that I share that you're just like, I didn't really think about that when it comes to interviewing, especially in the area of the do's versus the don'ts. I feel like some of the don'ts you kind of know or inherently should be aware of. But again, as an HR professional for over 20 years, the things that may seem like, makes sense to me, may be things that are just newer information to other people who, number one, don't interview all the time. There are people who, may only interview for jobs because they're loyal to their company. They stay in one position for a long period of time. So they may only interview 2, 3, 4 times in their entire career span, where you have other people who are HR professionals who are just so used to this information every single day. So that's another reason why I felt like this was a really important topic to talk about. So on that note, we're going to talk about how one of the first things that you absolutely should make sure that you do before going into the interview is researching the company. So making sure that you go to their website, that you look up information about the company, what they're passionate about, what their goals are, their drivers for success, so to speak. Things that you could potentially bring up during the interview, especially when it comes time for you to ask your questions, because you could say, I saw on your website that you speak about this being something that the company is really, values and thinks is very important, or these are some programs that I see that you offer. And if I become an employee, will I be able to join those programs? So it's just different things that you can learn about the organization. It helps the employer, the interviewer understand that you are extremely interested in the company, as in you in researching the company and making sure you understand more about it. And it just is an overall better look, especially if one of the first questions that sometimes companies ask is, why are you interested in working for our organization? Or tell me a little bit about what you know about our company. And if they ask you that question and you haven't really looked into researching the company and what they do, you're not going to have an adequate answer to be able to give them other than the fluff that you would know just from the company being the company and what everybody else knows. But if you can share information that really delves into what it is that the company's values are, that's going to speak volumes. So researching the company is definitely key. The other thing is make sure that you practice some interview questions. One of the things that I give access to within my community is a list of interview questions, like the top 20 that people potentially will be asked during an interview, so that way they can know, these are the things that people might actually bring up during my interview. And if I already pre-prepare and pre-plan what these responses are, then that's going to help to make sure that I am able to just speak off the cuff, or at least seeming as though I'm speaking off the cuff, and being able to answer these questions pretty fluently without feeling nervous. So some of the things that you can do is you can actually ask ChatGPT to come up with some questions for you. Like, what are some common questions? You could do that. You could also have a friend ask you certain questions, role play with a spouse, with a child, with anybody, just whoever can ask you the questions, and you answer those questions to the best of your ability, making sure that you feel confident in your responses to those questions. Plus, when you know the questions that you potentially could be asked, it's almost like you have a cheat sheet to help you to make sure that you are putting your best foot forward, right? And you are going to probably stand out from the competition as well, because if they don't do their due diligence and plan accordingly, then they're going to look like they really are struggling to come up with the answers, where you're right off the bat knowing exactly not only what you want to say, but also how you want to say it. So for some of the questions that you should just automatically plan to be able to answer, it's going to be, tell me about yourself. Tell the panel members about yourself. Who are you? Maybe in 1 or 2 minutes, they may say for you to give us some information about your history, who you are, as well as why are you interested in this opportunity, which is a question that I mentioned a moment ago. And why are you interested in working here? So letting them know, this is why this company is the one that I want to work at, as opposed to any of these other companies that may be out here hiring. And right now, more than ever, employers know that they have the upper hand. There's more people who are looking for jobs than there are people who actually, than companies that are actually looking to hire people. And so they know that they have the upper hand, and they may try to use that to their advantage as well when it comes to the offer time, which is a whole other conversation. But also they know that, hey, the person who is presenting themselves the best is the one that we can go with. We don't have to just pick somebody for the sake of filling a position. We actually can pick the absolute best person for this role, who came to the table extremely prepared and confident for the interview. Now, the other thing should be a given, but I'm just going to say it anyway, just in case, but you have to be dressed appropriately for the interview, making sure that you understand what the parameters are of the interview. If you're not sure, you can always ask the recruiter, oh, is this business casual? Is this something where I should come in a business suit? There are even some areas of business where they may tell you, for example, you can come in your work clothes. A lot of times when you do that, it's because of the fact that they want to see, how do you dress appropriately for work? So how do you show up? Do you show up with the right PPE, for example? As I say PPE, and people who may not know that, but do you wear the steel-toed boots when you show up for a construction site interview and you can be dressed in your casual clothes? Do you have on the appropriate, attire for that? Are you someone who would, I don't know if you would necessarily show up with the safety goggles and things of that nature, but it could be part of the questions that they will ask you. Do you have the right equipment? Do you have the right attire? So it could be that you showing up in a suit for a construction position may not be what their expectation was. So definitely make sure that you have information from the recruiter of what that is when it comes to dress code for the interview. But if you are in a professional setting, then by all means, just know that professional attire is probably more required, even if that means more of a business casual. Just again, making sure that you understand what the expectations are regarding that, so that you're not showing up one way and everybody else is showing up a different way for that interview. It speaks volumes again. All right. So the other thing is bringing a copy of your resume. Now, 9 times out of 10, probably 10 times out of 10, the hiring leader or any panelists who are going to be a part of the interview are already going to have your resume. However, being prepared is really important. You never know. Someone could rush into the interview at the last minute, forgot to print it out, and may ask you, hey, do you have a copy of your resume? And just being able to say, yes, of course, it's right here, and giving that to them. Now, keeping in mind that you may have, and if you've listened to any of my other coaching calls and information in regards to preparing for an interview, you may have tweaked your resume specifically for that job. And if you did that, make sure that that's the resume that you're bringing to that interview as well. So you don't want to bring, if you apply to different positions in different areas of business, don't bring the wrong area of business to the right interview, because then they're going to look at the resume and say, there's something out of alignment. They're talking numbers over here and we need strategy over there. So if we're looking for a strategy person, why is it that there's so much information here that's about numbers? Oh, I brought the wrong resume that I meant to bring to, this particular interview. I actually didn't print the right one. So just not having to have that kind of awkward conversation. Make sure you bring the right resume, as well as a notepad and pen, so that way, as you are there, you can take notes. You can even have some of the pre-written questions that you plan to ask the panel right there on your notepad as well, so that way you are really prepared to go ahead and ask those questions, jot down their responses, and that way you're not kind of trying to think off the cuff of what it is that you want to ask them. Of course, you can add your own questions in based on how the flow of the interview goes as well. Maybe even not ask the ones that are on your page, but just being prepared. Again, the preparing for an interview builds the confidence for the interview. All right. The other thing is, of course, preparing for the interview with and making sure you have the right questions that you want to ask. At the end of the interview, you should never leave an interview and say, no, I don't have any questions. You should always have questions for the interviewers, so that way it can show your level of interest, and again, shows you're prepared, as well as the fact that a lot of times when people do say, oh, no, I don't have any questions, it kind of leaves the panel members thinking like, oh, well, we left time for people to be able to ask questions. Often they schedule the interview with enough time at the end for those questions to be asked and answered. So if you don't have any questions, sometimes that can feel like almost a negative. And I'll give you 2 just easy questions that you can always ask at the end of an interview. And then that way, you know that, oh, these are 2 that it's a golden. Number 1, and I don't feel like one of the questions should be, how soon will it be before I hear something about this? I mean, you can definitely ask that at the very, very end, but that shouldn't be the first question that you ask. Instead, I would say, tell me a little bit about what you enjoy about working at this company. So, or you could say at XYZ, whatever the company name is, but putting the question back on the panel to sell you on why this is the right company for you. The other thing that you can ask is, if I get this role, and this would be more of a question for if the hiring leader is a part of the interview. There are sometimes instances where the hiring leader isn't a part of the interview. They actually have where other panel members are that may be a part of the team or a part of the larger organization. And then the leader will talk to, like in a second round interview, the top candidate or candidates. And so in that instance, though, you can always ask the hiring leader, tell me a little bit about your leadership style and the way in which you prefer your employees to communicate with you. So it gives them the opportunity to say, hey, this is the type of leader I am. You can pick up on, okay, does it sound like they're more of a free spirit? Are they more of a micromanager? Are they somebody who, wants to ensure that they know everything at all times? Are they someone who's going to give you the autonomy to do what you need to do? Or are they going to be like, I'm barely going to train you and you're going to be on your own when you come on board here? And you have to decide whether or not what their response is the type of leader that you want to report to. Because in the interview process, it is not all about them determining if you are a fit for their organization. It is about you also determining if you are wanting to work for their organization. So are they a fit for you is just as important. The other thing that I would share is making sure that you follow up with an email after the interviews. That's really important. A lot of times people, even if they're not necessarily sharing information about, let's say, what it is that they, even if, let me rephrase that, even if you feel as though this interview didn't quite go as planned and you're feeling like they didn't really show me that this is the company I want to work with, still send a thank you. Typically now it's more of an email than it is what it used to be, which used to be that you would do a handwritten note and put it in the mail and send it off. Companies aren't necessarily expecting that level of attention, but they are at least looking for an email to be sent so that way they can utilize, and keep in mind that, hey, this is someone who's not only very interested, but also they are going above and beyond to let us know that, hey, and you can just keep it very simple. You could just say, look, I really, dear sir, ma'am, whoever it is, depending on how your engagement was with that group, Mr. or Mrs., whoever, but I really appreciated the time that you took out of your very busy schedule to speak with me in regards to the opportunity of blah, blah, blah. I just wanted to let you know, especially if you're still interested, that you are very interested in the opportunity and look forward to hearing from them. If you're not as interested, you can still send the thank you, but just, keep that part out because we want to be true and authentic. But we could just say, looking forward to hearing what your response is to the interview. And, thank you for your time again, and, sign off. And so I would say definitely just making sure that you let them know about that. You never want to burn a bridge. You never want them to feel as though you left and just, drop the ball in regards to the thank you. So that to me is really important, and typically to a lot of hiring leaders as well. So I feel as though based on that, we've already talked quite a bit about the do's. And so let's go through a few really quick don'ts. I might do another episode on the don'ts just because we're already at my typical 15-minute time frame. But a few of the don'ts that I'll go through really fast is don't speak negatively about past employers. Number one, it just does not look good. Number two, the employer is going to see it as, okay, if you're saying this about your last employer, what are you going to say about me if anything ever happens and you're unsatisfied here? What are you going to say about me when you go to the next interview about your working relationship with me if you're, having this type of conversation with me about your previous employer? So it can make or break actually an interview process where everything could go well. But then at the end, when they're like, is there anything else you want to share? And you're like, yeah, I just really need this job because my current situation is this and my leader's done this and da, da, da. And they could literally say, oh, that was such a good interview until that last question, and that person like completely dismembering their leader, their leadership, their whole company and organization. And that can turn people off. So definitely making sure you don't do that. Don't come in disheveled and disorganized. Making sure that you are there well in advance of the interview time so that way you can be calm, not, feeling rushed and sweaty and, all of that, making sure you know where you're going to park, if there's paid parking or if there is a lot, how you're going to go about navigating your way, especially like if it's a downtown office or an office in which you have to go to a certain suite in order for you to have your interview, just making sure that you know exactly where you're supposed to go and what you're supposed to do in advance of you actually needing to be there at a specific time. And then the last thing I'll say is when it comes to giving your responses and answers, just making sure that you're not like, oh, I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't know what that answer is. I don't know what that response is. What I would prefer and what I feel works better for people to do in those situations is to say, let me think about that. Can you give me a moment so I can think about that? Because often once you just take a moment, a pause and think about it, some situation will present itself that you can share for that example. And oftentimes, even if you pause, and let's say it's a 30-second, a 45-second, a minute pause of you thinking about something, when you come back and you actually have an answer, and especially if that answer is amazing, then no one's going to remember the pause. They're going to remember like, oh, that one, I rated them this because of the fact that they hit the nail on the head with their response. So don't feel as though that pause, that dead air is going to be a negative for your interview. Just know that depending on your response to the question, based on taking that moment to think about what you wanted to articulate as your actual answer, it can make the difference of saying, oh, Oh, yeah, that's right. They did pause. I totally forgot about that because their answer was so good. So keeping that in mind, don't let that make you feel so uncomfortable that it messes up the rest of the flow of your interview. That should absolutely not be the case. And yeah, I think that will be it for today. And of course, I will just say this, making sure that there's also not just that one answer, like that one sentence, like, oh, tell me about a time when this happened. And you're like, oh, I did this and then it all worked out. Okay, no, you need to elaborate. Get used to the storytelling of it, not a 15-minute long story, but making sure that you give enough information when you give your response, that it's not as though you have, just totally given like a quick sentence and expect that that's going to give them the full picture of everything that you can do and everything that you can bring to the table. So, on that note, that is everything that we are going to talk about today regarding interviews. I hope that you all found something that you can take away from this information. And if there is anything that you have as questions regarding that, feel free to reach out to me and I'll be able to answer any of those questions for you. I also put a link in this post about my mini course that I have that's called From Overlooked to Interviewed. And that is where some people feel as though I apply, but I don't actually get to the point of getting the interview. Or even if I get the interview, I don't get to the point of getting the offer. And so my From Overlooked to Interviewed helps people to be able to not only find out the information about how to read a job description, how to go about applying to the right jobs and not throwing spaghetti at the wall and applying to every job you see, but making sure you're applying to the right positions, making sure you know how to prep and prepare for your interviews, as well as even negotiating offers, how to follow up, things of that nature. So if you are interested in From Overlooked to Interviewed, that link is in the description of this post. And for the Victorious Movement community. And so, as you can see here, the community isn't just a coaching community, excuse me. It's kind of a bridge from where you are to where you want to be. So, just making sure that if you are feeling like you're unsure about how to like make these dreams that you have for yourself come to life, or if you feel stuck and you're just feeling like you're kind of in an area of self-doubt and procrastination, by all means, the Victorious Movement may be for you. So I hope everybody has an amazing rest of your day. Take care of yourself, and we'll talk again on Friday in regards to purpose. Take care, everybody.